собраться в конференц-зале. Всем собраться в конференц-зале, пожалуйста. All hands to the wardroom. All hands to the wardroom, please.
This is the most difficult announcement. As you know, things have not been going well back home. Well, it's gotten worse, a lot worse.
Subversion can be only successful when the initiator, the actor, the agent of subversion has a responsive target. It's a two-way traffic. United States is a receptive target of subversion.
For all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning was the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament, the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning was the second day. God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and he gathered together the waters called the sea. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, it flows with good night, good luck, Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on this good earth.
Subversion. It's a two-way traffic. You know, I've watched several of those Yuri Bezmenov presentations over the years, and they do seem to get more applicable to so many things as time goes on. This whole idea of subversion and propaganda, somehow the issue of propaganda is on my mind a lot lately. I'm not sure why. No shortage of propaganda subversion going on these days, that's for sure, right? And speaking of which, So a couple of months ago, I got an email from a viewer who said she'd been watching for about a year, and she shared some videos with a pastor friend of hers. And so she shared his response. I guess he just watched one of the videos that she sent, one that I had made many years back in response to Dr. Jason Lyle, who's this creationist astronomer guy. And I don't know. I don't even know how relevant all of that is, but he wrote back a 7-page PDF response, which in some ways was very similar to responses I'd seen many, many times over the years, and really wasn't anything really new or surprising. But the weird part about it to me was to be sitting there reading it in 2022. So this is January 2022. He's responding to my video. And how much of it was, him trying to refute that specific video or just the flat earth in general, I guess would be, up for debate. But not having had the chance to actually talk to him or respond, it prompted a lot of thought, because as I kept sitting there thinking about what would I say back to her or to him, I was kind of floored by just somehow, essentially, it was a 7-page response, but he basically summed up my whole position as arguing that A, science has been wrong about evolution, and so B, therefore all science is false. Which hopefully should go without saying that that is not my position or anything I've ever tried to argue, but that is, was his takeaway, that because evolution was not biblical, then, and so yeah, I was just kind of at a loss. I'm sitting here going, here we are after 2 years of all kinds of things going on in the name of science and follow the science, that has nothing to do with astronomy or rockets or any of this stuff. And so, yeah, I was like, if you really don't think there's anything else besides Darwinian evolution that just maybe that, is begging for a little more scrutiny than it has been getting by a lot of people, then I don't know what to say at this point. Because I know if I had the opportunity to sit down with this pastor, the last thing I'd be trying to do right off the bat would be debate the shape of the earth or the size of the firmament and any of that stuff. I'd probably have some few basic questions just about what he believes about the gospel. But then if we're going to get into anything that has to do with applying biblical truth to the modern context, to modern life, and anything to do with faith and science, it's probably not going to be that. Because as far as I know, this debate's been going on for how long, and I've yet to meet anybody who's been in the actual position of having to make the decision to get on a rocket ship themselves and put on the spacesuit and strap in for the countdown, or make the choice of whether to put their children on the rocket.
Inside this plane, men are being specially trained for the space age. They are American astronauts in the same state of weightlessness they'll experience in outer space. A rough, rugged business being an astronaut. These men have to be in top physical condition when they face the countdown. And here's a new way to help keep you in shape for the space age. New Post-Count-Off. Post-Count-Off is made with nutritious oats. You can count on it. Post-Count-Off has exciting space news on every package back. Start your day a little bit better with new Post-Count-Off.
3, 2, 1.
You can count on it.
There's some other tough decisions people have had to make in recent months and years. Difficult conversations. So yeah, cosmology hasn't really been one of them, and yet it was like this could have been written in 2015. If you read this 7-page response, you would have had nothing to tip you off that it was now versus then or 20 years ago. Because it was, it was all the same, mentioning the moon, just basically mocking conspiracy theory and dismissing it, and the same kind of patronizing thing about you're elevating this to some salvation issue. And every time I tried to write a response, I just ended up going on some rant about what world are you living in? What planet are you on? Haha. And then yeah, between January and now, 2 months later, the narrative's already been changed. The movie's switched on to something else. The nonstop movie that played for 2 years was basically the flip of a switch. And so when I think about all the things that I ended up looking into because of this whole biblical cosmology question that I wasn't expecting to encounter, but it kind of got a hold of me, and here we are. But yeah, maybe first we need to talk about this giant media machine and the ability that it has to direct the mass formation on almost the turn of a dime. It is staggering. I mean, and it was just all kind of summed up by watching this clip in the news from a few weeks ago where these Brits are trying to volunteer to go help fight in Ukraine. And of course the media is covering it and showing it like, oh, what a brave, awesome thing. And it was like, how many weeks ago were these same people not allowed to like walk in the park? Or they were being told to be afraid of being too close to grandchildren. But now they're going to go pick up machine guns, and yeah, they're going to go fight off the Russians, who somehow now are just incompetent boobs. And Putin is, he's the megalomaniac Trump 2.0 on a world scale. Whatever, but it kind of pulled me back to a lot of stuff that I hadn't really thought about in however many years, just about this entire crazy narrative that has been going on and switching and contradicting itself, and how actually looking into these crazy conspiracy type questions, quote unquote, prompted me to just start looking into just what recorded history even claims happened at all these stages along the way and try and piece the whole story, the progression together. And the more you look into that, the more things start to jump out as just really not being exactly what you first thought they were. What many people assume and how it's kind of presented.
First came Russia's Sputnik satellite. Then Yuri Gagarin became the first man to orbit the Earth. Soviet space missions reached for the Moon, Mars, Venus. Now you can see the secret spacecraft the Kremlin kept hidden for a generation. Red Star in Orbit, a special exhibition of Soviet spacecraft and art seen outside Russia for the very first time. Now showing exclusively at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Don't miss it.
We have Yuri Gagarin, who was the first man to supposedly fly through space, and he went around the globe in an hour and 20 minutes and landed in a field after ejecting out of his spherical spacecraft with tiny windows that he could supposedly look out of. But it wasn't until 1971 that they even admitted that he had supposedly what really happened, that he ejected out and was found in a field by some farmers and told them that he had to go call Moscow. And then, of course, he dies in a training accident. But even the BBC was seeming to question some of the details of his account, and I'd never seen this until recently either.
While we're talking about the ship in flight, there's one small mystery which I think possibly you may be able to clear up for us, but perhaps not, but I'd like to try. On the day when you were making the flight, on the day when Moscow Radio was describing you making the flight, there appeared in our communist newspaper, the Daily Worker, the report that the flight had been made successfully and that the flyer had returned to the Earth. And that report was dated from Moscow the day before. I'm sorry to put this at such length, but this created the impression, of course, that another flight had taken place and you had flown second, and nobody has ever dispelled this yet. Will you do it now?
Могу совершенно компетентно вам заявить, что, очевидно, корреспонденту этой газеты было известно несколько больше, чем тем людям, которые занимаются в нашей стране непосредственно космическими полетами.
Now, I can assure you quite authoritatively that evidently the correspondent of that paper felt he was better informed than the actual people who are in charge of this work in the Soviet Union.
May I have a question?
The interesting thing when you look back is that basically the whole space race narrative and the Cold War have always just been kind of coupled together since the beginning. And you had World War II that kind of put the whole Soviet space program on pause, and then after it, the United States and Russia divided up all the Nazi rocket scientists and chemical scientists and the proto-MK Ultra guys, all the really fun stuff that the Nazis were doing. Divvied them up, and that just then fueled all this research during the 50s and 60s in all kinds of crazy areas. And so, and the amazing thing to look back and just see how throughout it's this constant like dichotomy of death and destruction, or the potential for death and destruction, just nuclear annihilation. You know, Sputnik flies over, allegedly,